The cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 552 to Miami hummed with the low buzz of pre-flight anticipation. Business class, a haven of plush leather seats and complimentary sparkling water, was half filled with passengers settling in, laptops open, earbuds in, the occasional clink of a glass. Overhead bins clicked shut, and the air conditioning whispered a cool promise of comfort. At seat 3, a window seat with extra legroom, a woman sat with the kind of poise that seemed to command the space around her. Olivia Bennett, 45, wore tailored charcoal gray blazer that hugged her frame like it was custom-made by a Savile Row designer. Her diamond ring caught the cabin lights as she turned a page of Forbes, her eyes scanning an article about the future of corporate governance. A sleek leather briefcase rested in the overhead compartment, monogrammed with earbuds and a discreet logo that only a few might recognize, a stylized M for Meridian Investment Group. Olivia's phone buzzed softly on the tray table. She glanced at it, her manicured fingers pausing mid-page. The email subject line read, "Board meeting agenda, Miami acquisition." She tapped the screen to dismiss it, her expression unreadable, and returned to her magazine. The move was subtle, but it carried the weight of someone accustomed to wielding power quietly. Around her, passengers stole glances, some out of curiosity, others with the faint judgment that comes from seeing a black woman in a space where wealth and status are assumed to look a certain way. The boarding process continued, a steady stream of passengers filing in until a man in a rumpled navy polo shirt and khakis stormed down the aisle. James Carter, mid-50s, carried the kind of confidence that comes from years of unchallenged privilege. His face was flushed, beads of sweat dotting his forehead despite the chill cabin air. He clutched a crumpled boarding pass in one hand, his other gripping the handle of a scuffed carry-on. He stopped abruptly at row 3, his eyes locking onto Olivia. "Excuse me," Carter said, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "You're in my seat." Olivia didn't look up. She turned another page of Forbes, the rustle of paper the only sound breaking the sudden silence in business class. Carter's jaw tightened. He waved his boarding pass like a flag of authority. "This is 3A. I paid extra for this seat. You need to move." The tension was immediate, electric. Passengers nearby shifted in their seats, sensing a confrontation brewing. A businessman in 4C lowered his tablet, his eyes narrowing. A young woman in 3B, Emily Jiang, a 27-year-old Stanford MBA student, glanced up from her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Something about Carter's tone-sharp, dismissive set her on edge. She reached for her phone, her thumb brushing the TikTok app icon. Olivia finally raised her eyes, her gaze steady, unflinching. It wasn't confrontational, but it carried a weight that made Carter shift his stance. Her eyebrow arched slightly, a gesture so subtle it might have gone unnoticed, except it didn't. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice calm, measured, "but I believe you're mistaken." Carter's face reddened further. "Mistaken? Lady, I know my seat. 3A. Paid for it months ago." He leaned forward, using his height to loom over her, his boarding pass now inches from her face. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but you're holding up the whole flight." The microaggression landed like a slap, though Olivia's expression didn't change. Her fingers remained wrapped around her magazine, her posture as still as a statue. Only the slightest tilt of her head betrayed her attention, as if she were studying him like a scientist observing a specimen. The cabin lights glinted off her ring again, a quiet reminder of something Carter hadn't yet grasped. Emily Jiang, in 3B, couldn't stay silent any longer. "Sir, is there a problem?" she asked, her voice firm but polite. Her phone was already in her hand, the camera app open. She'd seen enough viral videos to know where this was heading, another hashtag travel while black incident, a hashtag that had trended heavily in 2025 after a string of high-profile discrimination cases in the airline industry. Just last month, a black doctor had been questioned about her first-class seat on a Delta flight, sparking a firestorm on ex-Emily hit record, her TikTok livestream flickering to life. "Y'all, this guy's trying to kick a woman out of her seat," she whispered into her phone, angling it to capture both Carter and Olivia. Carter didn't even glance at Emily. "No problem," he said, his tone clipped. "Just someone who doesn't understand airplane seating." The words dripped with condescension, and Emily's viewer count ticked up 50, then 100, as her followers tuned in. Comments began flooding the screen. Asterisk, not again. This dude's about to go viral for all the wrong reasons. Olivia's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she still didn't speak. Her silence was unnerving, a weapon in its own right. Carter, emboldened by her lack of response, pressed on. "I think there's been some confusion," he said, his voice growing louder, carrying through the cabin. "This lady seems to think she belongs in business class." The accusation hung in the air, heavy with implication. A murmur rippled through the cabin. The businessman in 4C nodded slightly, muttering to his seatmate, "Seen this before." Probably an upgrade mix-up. A woman in 2A, clutching a designer purse, glanced back with a frown. The cabin was dividing, some siding with Carter's bluster, others sensing the injustice but hesitant to intervene. Over the intercom, a voice crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a 15-minute departure delay due to a passenger seating issue." The announcement was like fuel on a fire. Carter's face brightened with vindication. "See? You're holding up the whole flight," he said, pointing at Olivia. "Just move, and we can all get on with our day." Olivia's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, and for a brief moment, Emily's camera caught the email subject line: Meridian Investment Group, Q3 Strategy. Olivia closed the phone quickly, but not before the logo on her lock screen, a stylized meme, flashed into view. Emily's viewers noticed, one commenting, "Asterisk, wait, is that Meridian? They own half the airline industry?" The count climbed to 200. Susan Miller, a gate agent with 22 years at Atlantic Airways, appeared at the head of the aisle. Her smile was forced, the kind worn by someone who'd rather be anywhere else. She'd dealt with her share of difficult passengers, but something about this scene felt different charged, like the air before a storm. "Is there a seating issue here?" she asked, her eyes instinctively landing on Olivia first. "This woman's in my seat," Carter said, pointing again. "Can you please handle this? I have a meeting in Miami, and I'm not about to miss it because of some mix-up." Olivia reached into her purse, her movements deliberate, and produced her boarding pass. She handed it to Susan without a word. The gate agent's eyes scanned the document, her brow furrowing. "Ma'am, this shows seat 3A, she said, confusion creeping into her voice. "That's impossible," Carter snapped. "Let me see that." He reached for the pass, but Olivia had already tucked it away. In the brief moment it was visible, Emily's live stream caught a detail: Platinum Elite, printed in gold across the top. Her viewers were now at 300, with comments like, "Asterisk, she's got elite status. This guy's done." Asterisk, Susan hesitated, caught between Carter's insistence and Olivia's calm certainty. "Sir, I need to see your boarding pass," she said, turning to Carter. He handed it over triumphantly. "3A, paid for months ago. Check the system." Susan studied both documents, her frown deepening. "There seems to be a duplicate assignment," she said. "This happens sometimes with our system." She glanced at Olivia, then back at Carter. "Sir, you were here first, so—" "Actually," Emily interrupted from 3B, her phone still recording. "She was seated when I boarded, 20 minutes ago." Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it. The viewer count hit 500, and the comments were growing angrier. This is straight-up racism. Asterisk, call him out. Asterisk Carter's face reddened further. I don't care how long she's been sitting there. That's my seat. He turned back to Susan. Fix this, now. Olivia's briefcase, still in the overhead compartment, bore the monogrammed OB and that mysterious logo. Emily zoomed in on it, her viewers speculating wildly. Asterisk, is that Meridian Investment Group? Asterisk, no way, they own Atlantic Airways. The digital departure board updated. Departure in 14 minutes. Susan, visibly flustered, tried to regain control. Ma'am, she said to Olivia, would you mind if we found you another seat? Perhaps in first class? It was a peace offering, but it came too late. Olivia finally spoke, her voice low, controlled, cutting through the noise like a blade. I'm comfortable here. Carter exploded. This is ridiculous. Some people just don't know their place. The words landed like poison, silencing. The cabin. Emily's viewer count surged to 800. The comments now a torrent of outrage. Asterisk, did he just say that? This man's career is over. Olivia's composure never wavered, but something shifted in her eyes. A calculation, a decision being made. The departure board ticked down. 11 minutes. Susan's authority was crumbling. Sir, please lower your voice, she said, but her tone lacked conviction. Other passengers were pulling out phones now, the scene becoming a spectacle. The businessman in 4C leaned forward, muttering, this is why upgrades need to be vetted better. Emily whispered into her phone, y'all seeing this? This man just assumes she doesn't belong because of how she looks. Her stream hit 1,000 viewers, and the hashtag travel while black began trending locally on X. The cabin was a powder keg, and Olivia Bennett was the calm at its center, her silence louder than Carter's bluster. The cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 552 to Miami was a pressure cooker, the air thick with anticipation. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade as every eye in business class fixed on row 3. Olivia Bennett sat in seat 3A, her tailored blazer pristine, her posture as unyielding as a marble statue. Her Forbes magazine lay open on the tray table, but her attention was now on James Carter, who loomed over her, his face a deepening shade of crimson. His crumpled boarding pass trembled in his hand as he jabbed a finger toward her. This is my seat, he repeated, his voice carrying a mix of frustration and entitlement that silenced nearby conversations. I don't know how you got here, but you're not staying. Olivia's silence was a force of its own, a calm that seemed to absorb Carter's aggression and reflect it back as futility. Her dark eyes studied him, not with anger but with a kind of detached curiosity, as if she were cataloging his every word for later use. The cabin lights caught the diamond on her ring, a subtle flash that went unnoticed by Carter, but not by Emily Jang in 3B. Emily's TikTok livestream was gaining traction. 1,200 viewers now, the comments scrolling faster than she could read. This guy's digging his own grave. Asterisk hashtag travel while black trending again. Her phone, propped on her tray table, captured every moment, the lens framing Carter's bluster and Olivia's composure in stark contrast. Susan Miller, the gate agent with 22 years of experience, stood frozen at the head of the aisle. Her forced smile had crumbled, replaced by a nervous twitch at the corner of her mouth. She clutched both boarding passes, Olivia's, marked with Platinum Elite in gold, and Carter's, dog-eared but clearly stating 3A. There's a duplicate assignment, she said again, her voice wavering as she glanced between the two. Passengers, our system sometimes overbooks seats. It's rare, but rare. Carter interrupted, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. I paid $1,200 for this seat. I have a meeting in Miami with investors. I'm not moving to economy. Because of some glitch. He leaned closer to Olivia, his height advantage more pronounced now, his voice dropping to a condescending whisper. Look, I'm sure this is all very confusing for you, but you need to go where you're supposed to be. The words landed like a punch, laced with assumptions that hung heavy in the cabin air. A woman in two gasped softly, clutching her purse tighter. The businessman in 4C, a middle-aged man in a pinstripe suit, nodded in agreement, muttering to his seatmate, "This is what happens when they let just anyone into business class." His comment was quiet but audible, and it sent a ripple of unease through the cabin. Other passengers were less certain. Some pulled out phones, recording discreetly, while others craned their necks to see the drama unfold. Emily's live stream hit 1,500 viewers, the comments now a torrent of outrage and speculation. He's assuming she doesn't belong because she's black. Asterisk, call the crew out. Emily leaned into her phone, her voice low but firm. Y'all, this man's been harassing her for 5 minutes straight, and the crew's just standing there. She angled her camera to catch Susan's hesitant expression, then panned back to Olivia, who hadn't moved an inch. Her manicured fingers rested lightly on her magazine. Her head tilted just enough to signal she was listening, not to Carter, but to the entire cabin. Susan, caught in the crossfire, tried to regain control. "Sir, please, let's keep this civil," she said to Carter, but her eyes darted to Olivia, as if expecting her to back down. "Ma'am, can you confirm your boarding pass again? Just to be sure." The request was polite, but carried an unspoken assumption that Olivia was the one who needed to prove herself. Carter smirked, folding his arms as if victory were already his. Olivia reached into her purse with deliberate grace, producing her boarding pass again. She handed it to Susan without breaking eye contact with Carter. The gate agent's fingers trembled slightly as she examined it, her confusion deepening. "This is definitely 3A," she said, almost to herself. "But so is his." She glanced at Carter's pass, then back at Olivia's, her brow furrowing as she noticed the asterisk platinum. Elite asterisk designation again. "Ma'am, when did you board?" 20 minutes ago, Olivia replied, her voice as smooth as polished stone. The foremost of the cabin. Her words were simple, factual, but they carried a weight that made Susan pause. Emily's camera caught the exchange, her viewers now at 2,000. Asterisk, she's been there the whole time. One comment read, "This is textbook discrimination." Carter's smirk faltered, but he doubled down. "Doesn't matter when she boarded. I booked this seat months ago. Check the system again." He turned to Susan, his tone commanding. "You need to fix this, or I'm filing a complaint. I know my rights as a passenger." The irony of his words wasn't lost on Emily, whose live stream was now trending locally on X under #TravelWhileBlack. She whispered into her phone, "He's talking about his rights while trying to kick her out of her seat. The audacity." Her viewers agreed, with comments like, "He's about to learn a lesson, and this is why we need to keep recording." Susan's radio crackled, and she stepped aside to speak quietly with the ground crew. The digital departure board updated. Departure in 10 minutes. The delay was fueling Carter's impatience, and he turned back to Olivia. "You're holding up an entire flight," he said, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "Just admit you made a mistaken move." Olivia's eyes flicked up from her magazine, locking onto Carter's. For the first time, she spoke directly to him, her voice low but piercing. "A mistake was made, Mr. Carter, but not by me." The use of his name startled him. He hadn't introduced himself. Her tone was calm, but there was an edge to it, like a blade hidden in silk. The cabin fell silent, even the businessman in 4C pausing his muttering to listen. Before Carter could respond, Captain Daniel Hayes emerged from the cockpit, his expression one of barely concealed annoyance. a 55-year-old veteran pilot with a reputation for efficiency. Hayes hated delays. They meant paperwork, misconnections, and angry passengers. His uniform was crisp, but his posture suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. "What's the situation?" he asked Susan, his eyes scanning the scene. "Seating dispute, Captain," Susan replied, her voice tight. "Double booking on 3A. Both passengers have valid boarding passes." She handed him the documents, and Hayes glanced at them, his gaze lingering on Olivia for a moment longer than necessary. His unconscious bias was subtle but present, a black woman in business class, calm but unyielding, versus a white businessman, loud and indignant. One of them had to be wrong, and his instincts leaned toward Carter. "Ma'am," Hayes said, addressing Olivia directly, "I need you to either confirm your seat or step off the aircraft so we can sort this out at the gate." His tone was professional but firm, carrying the weight of authority. Carter's smirk returned, wider now. He'd won, or so he thought. Emily's live stream surged to 2,500 viewers, the comments exploding. Asterisk the captain siding with him? This is why we can't trust the system. She spoke into her phone, her voice rising slightly. "Y'all, the captain just told her to get off the plane. She's been sitting there quietly the whole time, and they're still assuming she's the problem." Olivia didn't move. Her briefcase in the overhead compartment seemed to loom larger now, the monogrammed Obe and Meridian logo catching the light. She tilted her head slightly, studying Hayes as she had Carter. "Captain," she said, her voice steady, "I suggest you verify both boarding passes with your system before making assumptions." The word assumptions hung in the air, heavy with implication. Hayes blinked, caught off guard by her composure. Susan, still holding the boarding passes, radioed the ground crew again, her voice shaking. "We need a system check on seat 3. 2 passengers, both claiming it." The response was garbled, but the delay announcement came again. Asterisk departure. In 8 minutes, asterisk passengers in economy were now craning their necks, some standing to get a better view. Phones were out everywhere, recording from multiple angles. Carter seized the moment. "This is getting ridiculous," he said, turning to the cabin as if addressing an audience. "I've flown Atlantic Airways for years. I've never seen such a mess. Someone needs to take responsibility for this." His words were aimed at Olivia, but they landed on the entire cabin, stoking division. The businessman in 4C nodded again, whispering, "She's probably got some fake pass. Happens all the time." Emily's live stream hit 3,000 viewers, and the hashtag travel while black was now trending nationally. She zoomed in on Carter, capturing his self-righteous energy. "This man's acting like he owns the plane," she said to her audience. "But check out her vibe, she's not even fazed." The camera panned to Olivia, who was now looking at her phone, a faint smile playing at her lips. The screen showed a news alert. Dot to investigate airline discrimination after viral video sparks outrage. It was a reference to a recent case where a black passenger was removed from a United flight over a similar seating dispute, sparking a $2.8 million lawsuit. Susan returned, her face pale. "The system confirms both tickets are valid for 3A, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're waiting for the ground crew to resolve it." She looked at Olivia, then at Carter, her bias showing in her hesitation. "Sir, we'll get you seated soon," she said to Carter, her tone almost apologetic. Olivia's smile sharpened, though she said nothing. Her silence was becoming a spectacle, a challenge to the assumptions piling up around her. Emily's viewers were now at 3,500, with comments flooding in. Asterisk, she's about to drop a bomb, I can feel it. This is bigger than a seat dispute. Asterisk, the departure board ticked down. 6 minutes. The cabin was a tinderbox, and Olivia Bennett was holding the match, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 552 to Miami was a theater of tension. Every seat an audience to the unfolding drama in row 3. The digital departure board flickered. Departure in 6 minutes. James Carter stood over seat 3A, his face a mask of righteous indignation, his crumpled boarding pass clenched like a weapon. "This is my seat," he said again, his voice now a low growl directed at Olivia Bennett, who sat unmoved, her Forbes magazine still open on the tray table. Her tailored blazer was pristine, her diamond ring catching the cabin lights with every subtle movement. Her silence, a wall of calm, seemed to infuriate Carter further, his sweat-soaked polo shirt clinging to his frame as he leaned closer, his words dripping with condescension. "You're wasting everyone's time. Just admit you're in the wrong. Place and go." Olivia's eyes met his, steady and unyielding, like a chess master awaiting an opponent's inevitable blunder. The cabin was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the soft clicks of phones recording from every angle. Emily Jiang, in seat 3B, held her phone steady, her TikTok livestream now at 3,800 viewers, the comments a wildfire of outrage. "This guy's done for. She's about to end him. #hashtag travel while black is blowing up." Emily whispered into her phone, "Y'all, he's still going, but she hasn't flinched once. Something's coming, I know it." Susan Miller, the gate agent, stood frozen, clutching the 2 boarding passes, both valid for 3A. Her forced smile had vanished, replaced by a sheen of nervous sweat. She glanced at Captain Daniel Hayes, who had just emerged from the cockpit, his expression a mix of impatience and authority. "We need to resolve this now," Hayes said, his voice clipped. "We're already 6 minutes behind schedule." His eyes settled on Olivia, his unconscious bias subtle but evident in the way he addressed her directly. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time to confirm your seat or step off the aircraft." The ultimatum hung in the air like a guillotine. Carter's smirk widened, his arms folding triumphantly. The businessman in 4C nodded approvingly, whispering to his seatmate, "Finally, some action." Other passengers were less certain. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others kept their phones trained on the scene, sensing the weight of what was unfolding. Emily's live stream surged to 4,000 viewers, with comments flooding in. Asterisk, "The captain's assuming she's wrong too?" This is systemic racism in real time. Olivia's phone buzzed on the tray table, the screen lighting up with an email notification. Asterisk Meridian Investment Group. Acquisition update. Asterisk. She dismissed it with a tap, her movements deliberate, almost performative. Then, for the first time, she stood, her height modest but her presence commanding the entire cabin. Every eye followed her as she reached for her briefcase in the overhead compartment, the monogrammed OB and Meridian logo gleaming under the lights. She opened it with a soft click, retrieving a single sheet of paper official, with letterhead and signatures. "Captain Hayes," she said, her voice clear, controlled, carrying to every corner of the cabin. "Before you call security, I think you should see this." She handed the document to Hayes, her expression serene, but her eyes sharp, like a predator who'd been stalking her moment all along. Carter leaned forward, curious despite himself, his smirk faltering. "What's that supposed to be?" he demanded, his voice now tinged with uncertainty. Hayes scanned the document, his eyes widening with each line. His face went through a rapid cycle of emotions, confusion, recognition, then a dawning horror that drained the color from his cheeks. His posture stiffened, as if he'd been jolted by an electric shock. "Miss Bennett," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea." Susan moved closer, peering over his shoulder. Her eyes widened too, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she breathed, her radio slipping slightly in her trembling grip. Emily's camera caught the moment, her live stream now at 4,500 viewers. "Y'all, something big just happened," she whispered. "The captain looks like he's seen a ghost." Carter's confusion morphed into agitation. "What? What's going on? What did she show you?" He reached for the document, but Olivia had already tucked it back into her briefcase. Her movements, as precise as a surgeon's. She sat back down in 3A, crossing her legs and opening her Forbes magazine as if nothing had happened. "Just my credentials," she said simply, her voice so calm it sent a chill through the cabin. Hayes was still staring at the spot where the document had been, his hands shaking slightly. Susan's radio crackled, but she ignored it, her eyes locked on Olivia. "Miss Bennett," Hayes said, his voice cracking, "I owe you an enormous apology." "We all do." Carter's face twisted in disbelief. "Who is Miss Bennett?" he demanded, his voice rising to a shrill pitch. "What's going on here? Are you going to remove her or not?" Olivia looked up from her magazine, her gaze sweeping from Carter to Hayes to the entire cabin. "Olivia Bennett," she said, her tone conversational but weighted with authority. "Chairwoman of Meridian Investment Group." The name landed like a thunderclap. Carter's mouth fell open, but no words came out. Susan's face went ashen, and Hayes closed his eyes, as if calculating the end of his career. Emily's live stream exploded to 5,000 viewers. The comments a chaotic mix of shock and vindication. Asterisk, she owns the airline? Asterisk, this is the plot twist of the century. Asterisk, hashtag travel while Black just went nuclear. Emily read one aloud. Meridian Investment Group owns like half the airline industry. Another comment followed. She's on the Forbes power list, worth billions. Carter shook his head, his voice weak. That's impossible. She can't be. He trailed off, his bluster crumbling under the weight of reality. Olivia's smile was sharp, not warm, the kind of smile that signaled checkmate. Actually, she said, still flipping through her magazine, Meridian Investment Group owns a 67% controlling stake in Atlantic Airways. The words hit the cabin like a shockwave, silencing even the hum of passenger whispers. Which means, she continued, her voice steady, I'm your boss. All of your bosses, actually. Hayes looked like he wanted to disappear into the cockpit. Susan's radio fell silent, her hands trembling as she clutched it. The businessman in 4C sank back in his seat, his earlier confidence evaporating. Emily's viewers were now at 6,000. With the hashtag travel while Black trending nationally on X, comments poured in. This man's career is toast. She's a queen, Carter stammered, his face cycling through emotions, disbelief, panic, dawning horror. But you can't. I mean, he turned to Hayes, desperate for support. You're not buying this, are you? She's just trying to intimidate us. Olivia reached into her briefcase again, pulling out a thick folder of documents. She handed one to Hayes, her movements deliberate. Atlantic Airways Board of Directors meeting minutes, she said calmly. From last Tuesday. Page 3 shows the acquisition vote for Regional Connect Airways. My signature's at the bottom. Hayes scanned the page, his face turning gray. Page 7 details the $2.3 billion purchase agreement, Olivia continued. Meridian now controls 67% of Atlantic's outstanding shares. She handed another document to Susan, who took it like it was radioactive. This is our quarterly report, Olivia said. We reported $847 million in revenue last quarter. My firm's stake is worth approximately $3.2 billion. Susan's eyes widened, her breath catching. Miss Bennett, she whispered, I can't apologize enough. You can't? Olivia's eyebrow arched, her tone cutting. Interesting choice of words. Emily's live stream hit 7,000 viewers. The comments now a frenzy. Asterisk. She's owning this entire plane. Asterisk. This is better than any movie. Fire that guy now. Carter's bluster was gone, replaced by a desperate edge. Even if you are who you say you are, he said, his voice shaking, that doesn't give you the right to take my seat. I paid. For this, Olivia's gaze locked onto his, her smile vanishing. My seat, she corrected, on my airline, which I was testing. The words landed like hammer blows, each one stripping away Carter's bravado. Hayes closed his eyes, likely envisioning the paperwork piling up on his desk. Susan's radio crackled again, but she didn't respond, her attention fixed on Olivia. Testing? Susan asked, her voice barely audible. I fly commercial once a month. Unannounced, Olivia explained, her tone matter-of-fact. It's the only way to see how customers are really treated. She gestured around the cabin, her eyes taking in every face, every phone, every witness. Today's test revealed some interesting data points. Carter's shoulders sagged, the reality sinking in. Emily's live stream was now at 8,000 viewers, with comments like asterisk. She's been playing 4D chess this whole time. Asterisk. This is why you don't mess with black excellence. The departure board ticked down. 4 minutes. Asterisk. The cabin was a pressure cooker, and Olivia had just turned up the heat. She leaned forward slightly, addressing Carter directly. Mr. Carter, you assumed I didn't belong in business class because of how I look. You harassed me. You made racist assumptions in front of dozens of witnesses. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of a judge delivering a verdict. The question is, what are the consequences? Hayes found his voice, though it trembled. Ms. Bennett, what can we do to make this right? His earlier authority was gone, replaced by a mix of fear and deference. Olivia's smile returned, sharp as a blade. That's an interesting question, Captain. Let's start with Mr. Carter's behavior. She turned to him, her gaze unrelenting. You attempted to intimidate a passenger. You caused a flight delay. You created a hostile environment. She gestured to Emily's phone, and it's all documented. 8,000 people are watching you right now. Carter's face went white. Please, he stammered. I didn't mean. I can't have this ruin my life. His voice was pleading now, a far cry from his earlier arrogance. Should have thought of that before, Olivia said simply. She looked at Hayes and Susan. Captain, Ms. Miller, how does Atlantic Airways handle passengers who harass others? Hayes swallowed hard. We have a no-tolerance policy. Aggressive passengers can be banned from future flights. Excellent, Olivia said, her tone almost pleasant. Mr. Carter, you're now banned from Atlantic Airways. Permanently. The cabin fell silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Emily's live stream hit 9,000 viewers, the comments a roar of approval. Asterisk justice served. Asterisk, she's a legend. Asterisk Carter's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked to Hayes, then Susan, but both avoided his gaze. Olivia sat back in 3A, her magazine open again, as if the matter were settled. Now, she said, I believe we have a flight to catch. The cabin of Atlantic Airways Flight 552 to Miami was a frozen tableau, the air thick with the aftermath of Olivia Bennett's revelation. The digital departure board blinked. Departure in 3 minutes. In seat 3A, Olivia sat with her Forbes magazine open, her posture as composed as ever, but her presence now loomed over the entire aircraft like a quiet storm. Her diamond ring glinted under the cabin lights, a subtle reminder of the power she'd just unleashed. James Carter, his face drained of color, stood rooted to the aisle, his earlier bluster reduced to a trembling silence. His crumpled boarding pass dangled limply in his hand, a relic of his misplaced confidence. Emily Jang's TikTok livestream, still running from seat 3B, had skyrocketed to 10,000 viewers. The hashtag travel while black now trending nationally. On X comments flooded her screen. Asterisk, she just banned him from the airline. This is iconic. He's never recovering from this. Emily whispered into her phone. Yeah, she owns 67% of this airline, and she just put this man in his place. Without raising her voice, Captain Daniel Hayes stood near row 3, his crisp pilot's uniform no longer a shield for his authority. His hands were clasped tightly behind his back, betraying a slight tremor. Susan Miller, the gate agent, was visibly shaken, her radio silent, as she stared at Olivia with a mix of awe and dread. The businessman in 4C had sunk low in his seat, his earlier muttering silenced. Other passengers exchanged glances, some still recording, their phones capturing every moment of the unraveling drama. Olivia closed her magazine with a deliberate snap, her eyes sweeping the cabin. "Captain Hayes," she said, her voice calm, but commanding, "I suggest we prepare for takeoff. But first, let's address Mr. Carter's situation." She turned to Carter, whose face was now a sickly shade of white. "You're banned from Atlantic Airways, effective immediately. Security will escort you off in Miami." Carter's mouth opened, a weak protest forming. "You can't. I have a meeting." "My job." His voice cracked, the bravado gone. He looked to Hayes for support, but the captain averted his gaze, his earlier confidence shattered by Olivia's revelation. "Mr. Carter," Olivia said, her tone even but unyielding, "you harassed a passenger, made racist assumptions, and delayed this flight. Your actions are documented." She gestured to Emily's phone, its camera still trained on the scene. 10,000 people are watching. The consequences are yours to bear. Emily's live stream hit 11,000 viewers, with comments like, "He's about to be canceled forever." Asterisk, "She's a queen for staying so calm." Asterisk, the cabin was a pressure cooker. The weight of Olivia's words settling over everyone. Susan, her hands trembling, finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Miss Bennett, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "Intent doesn't matter, Ms. Miller," Olivia interrupted, her gaze piercing. "Impact does. You assumed I was the problem before investigating. You deferred to Mr. Carter's authority without question. How do you think that looks to other passengers of color?" Susan's eyes filled with tears, her head bowing in shame. Hayes cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. "Miss Bennett, what can we do to make this right? We'll cooperate fully." His earlier demand for Olivia to deplane now seemed like a distant miscalculation, one he was desperate to correct. Olivia stood, her presence commanding the cabin's attention. Let's discuss this in private," she said, gesturing toward the first-class galley, now cleared of passengers. "Captain Hayes, Ms. Miller, join me, and bring Miss Hernandez." Laura Hernandez, the flight supervisor, had just arrived from the gate desk, her clipboard clutched tightly. Her expression suggested she'd been briefed on the situation, and her eyes widened as she approached Olivia. The group moved to the galley, a small space lined with stainless steel and coffee machines. Emily's live stream followed, though she stayed in 3B, zooming in to capture the silhouettes through the galley curtain. Her viewers were now at 12,000, with comments urging her to keep recording. Asterisk, "Don't stop. This is history." Asterisk, "We need to see what happens next." Asterisk, inside the galley, Olivia sat across from Hayes, Susan, and Laura, her briefcase open on her lap. She pulled out a legal pad, her pen poised like a conductor's baton. "Let's discuss the facts," she said, her voice steady. Atlantic Airways reported $847 million in revenue last quarter. Our stock price is $127 per share. My firm, Meridian Investment Group, owns a 67% controlling stake, valued at $3.2 billion. She wrote the numbers as she spoke, each figure a hammer blow to the crew's composure. Hayes took notes, his hand shaking. Susan was crying quietly, her earlier professionalism replaced by raw vulnerability. Lavra, the newest to the scene, was frantically checking her phone, likely searching for Meridian's profile. Olivia continued, her tone matter-of-fact. Federal discrimination lawsuits against airlines averaged $2.8 million in settlements. Viral videos like this one, she nodded toward the galley curtain, where Emily's phone was still visible, typically cause a 12 to 18% stock price drop within 48 hours. At our valuation, that's a potential $380 million loss in market cap. Hayes swallowed hard, his pen pausing. "What do you need from us, Ms. Bennett?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "A complete policy overhaul," Olivia said without hesitation. "Within 30 days, I want new discrimination protocols. Mandatory, unconscious bias training for all customer-facing employees. And a direct reporting system that bypasses management and goes straight to the board." She tapped her pen against the pad, her eyes locking onto each crew member in turn. "This incident proves your current system is broken. You all assumed." The white passenger was correct, even when he became aggressive, and I remained calm. Susan's tears spilled over. "I've worked here 22 years, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't think, how many black passengers have you seen in business class in those 22 years? Olivia asked, her tone not accusing but relentless. Susan hesitated, her face crumpling as she realized the answer. "Not many," she admitted. "Exactly," Olivia said. "Your unconscious bias kicked in. You saw me and assumed I was the problem. That's what we need to fix." She turned to Lavra. "Ms. Hernandez, I want you to develop a passenger discrimination reporting app. Customers should report incidents directly to the board. No filtering through management. I need it operational next week." Lavra nodded, scribbling furiously. "Yes, ma'am. We can make that happen." Olivia's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, a faint smile crossing her lips. "The Department of Transportation's Office of Civil Rights is calling," she said. "They've been monitoring airline discrimination complaints, and today's incident is accelerating their review." She set the phone down, her eyes sweeping the group. "This wasn't an accident. I've been conducting systematic tests of airline discrimination policies for months. I fly commercial, unannounced, to document how passengers of color are treated." Hayes looked sick, his face pale. "You've been testing us?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Testing the system," Olivia corrected. "Today's test confirmed what I suspected. When faced with a conflict between a white passenger and a black passenger, staff consistently side with the white passenger." She opened her phone, showing a spreadsheet with dates, flights, and incident notes. "This is my 4th incident on Atlantic flights this year. The previous 3 involved passengers who didn't have the resources to fight back." Lavra was taking notes so fast her pen nearly tore the paper. "What can we do to prevent this?" she asked, her voice urgent. "Structural changes," Olivia said. "New hiring practices, diverse management teams, regular audits by external consultants. I've already retained Thompson and Associates, the leading civil rights law firm, to review our policies." She handed Laura a business card. "They'll contact you tomorrow." Hayes was sweating now. "Are we being sued?" he asked, his voice tight. "Not yet," Olivia said, her smile sharp. "But if we don't act, we will be by multiple parties." She gestured toward the galley curtain, where Emily's phone was still visible. "That live stream has been shared 15,000 times in the past 20 minutes. CNN and MSNBC are requesting interviews. Hashtag Travel While Black is trending nationally." The galley fell silent, the weight of Olivia's words sinking in. Outside, the cabin was buzzing again. passengers whispering about the bombshell revelation. Emily's live stream hit 13,000 viewers, with comments like, "She's rewriting the airline industry right now. This is what power looks like." Olivia closed her legal pad. "Captain Hayes, you'll work with our new diversity and inclusion officer starting next week. Ms. Miller, you'll attend mandatory sensitivity training and participate in our customer service excellence program. Ms. Hernandez, you'll oversee the app development and report directly to me." She stood, her presence filling the small space. "This is an opportunity, not a punishment. We're going to fix this problem properly." The departure board blinked. Pushback in progress. The plane began to move 45 minutes late. Olivia returned to seat 3A, her Forbes magazine open again. A small, satisfied smile on her lips. The crew dispersed, Hayes retreating to the cockpit, Susan wiping her tears, and Laura already on her phone with corporate headquarters. The cabin was alive with whispers, passengers texting friends about the incredible scene they'd just witnessed. Emily's live stream continued, now at 14,000 viewers, her voice a mix of awe and excitement. "Y'all, this woman just turned a racist incident into a masterclass on accountability." 6 months after the explosive incident on Atlantic Airways Flight 552, the Miami headquarters of the airline buzzed with a new energy. Glass-walled conference rooms gleamed under fluorescent lights, and employees moved with a sense of purpose that hadn't existed before. Olivia Bennett stood in her corner office, overlooking the bustling tarmac where planes taxied under a bright Florida sun. Her tailored blazer was replaced today by a crisp white blouse, but the diamond ring on her finger still caught the light, a quiet symbol of her authority. On her desk lay a quarterly report, its cover emblazoned with the Atlantic Airways logo and a bold new slogan, "Dignity in Flight." The numbers told a story of transformation discrimination complaints down 90%, customer satisfaction up 35%, and the stock price at an all-time high of $142 per share. Olivia flipped through the report, her eyes scanning the data with the precision of a strategist. The Dignity in Flight policy, launched in the wake of her confrontation with James Carter, had exceeded expectations. A passenger discrimination reporting app, downloaded 400,000 times, allowed customers to flag incidents directly to the board, bypassing management. Monthly diversity audits, conducted by external consultants from Thompson and Associates, ensured accountability. Mandatory unconscious bias training had reached 100% compliance among customer-facing staff, with 3 employees terminated for failing the program. Olivia's phone buzzed with a news alert. Asterisk Atlantic Airways named most inclusive airline by Civil Rights Coalition. Asterisk. She allowed herself a small smile, but her work was far from done. The ripple effects of that day on Flight 552 had spread far beyond the airline. Emily Jiang, the 27-year-old Stanford MBA student who live-streamed the incident, had parlayed her viral moment into a career in social justice journalism. Her TikTok account now boasted 2.3 million followers, and her documentary, Asterisk Seat 3A, a story of justice asterisk, had premiered at Sundance, earning critical acclaim and a distribution deal with a major streaming platform. Emily stood in a New York studio, preparing for an interview with MSNBC, her phone still buzzing with notifications from her followers. This started with one moment. She told the camera, her voice steady, one woman refusing to move, and one phone capturing it all. That's the power of speaking up. Her documentary had become required viewing in corporate day training sessions, amplifying the hashtag travel while black movement that was now a fixture in 2025 social discourse. James Carter, the man whose assumptions sparked the incident, was a shadow of his former self. The viral video, viewed 20 million times across platforms, had cost him his job as a mid-level executive at a Miami real estate firm. The public shaming was relentless. Posts labeled him Airline Karen, and his LinkedIn profile was flooded with comments referencing #TravelWhileBlack. But Carter's story didn't end in disgrace. Over the past 6 months, he'd begun a painful journey of self-reflection. He enrolled in diversity training with the NAACP, speaking at corporate seminars about his mistakes. Standing in a community center in Miami, he addressed a small group of business leaders, his voice quieter than it had been on the plane. "I assumed privilege I didn't have," he said, his eyes downcast. "I saw a black woman in business class and thought she didn't belong. I was wrong, and I'm working to make it right." His $50,000 donation to Atlantic's Diversity Scholarship Fund was a start, but he knew it wasn't enough. Next month, he'd testify before the House Transportation Committee, sharing his story to push for stronger airline discrimination laws. Susan Miller, the gate agent who deferred to Carter's authority, had also transformed. The 22-year veteran of Atlantic Airways completed the mandatory sensitivity training Olivia mandated, but she went further, enrolling in a DEI certification program. Now a diversity trainer, Susan used her experience as a cautionary tale. In a training session at Atlantic's headquarters, she stood before a group of new hires, her voice steady but emotional. "I didn't think I was biased," she admitted, "but I assumed Miss Bennett was the problem because of how she looked. That's what we're here to unlearn." Her sessions were now a cornerstone of Atlantic's customer service excellence program, and passengers of color reported feeling more respected on flights. The industry impact was seismic. 4 major airlines, United, Delta, American, and Southwest, had adopted policies modeled after Atlantic's Dignity in Flight initiative, citing Olivia's reforms in their annual reports. The Maya Washington method, a term coined by Harvard Business School, though adapted to Olivia Bennett method in their case study, was required reading in 3 MBA courses. It detailed how one moment of courage could transform an organization through strategic patience and systemic reform. The study quoted Olivia, "Power isn't about shouting. It's about knowing when to act and when to let others reveal themselves." Olivia's monthly test flights continued, but the results were markedly different. On a recent flight to Chicago, a gate agent greeted her with a warm smile. No questions asked about her business class seat. Passengers of color, emboldened by the #TravelWhileBlack movement, reported fewer incidents of profiling. The Department of Transportation, spurred by Olivia's coordination, had launched a formal investigation into airline discrimination, with preliminary findings due next month. A 2025 bill, the Airline Equity Act, was gaining traction in Congress, requiring carriers to publicly report discrimination complaints, a direct result of the Flight 552 incident. Back in her office, Olivia reviewed a letter from a young black executive who'd seen the viral video. "Your story gave me the courage to speak up in my boardroom," it read. "I used to shrink myself to fit in. Not anymore." Olivia filed the letter in a growing folder of similar messages, each one a testament to the cultural shift she'd ignited. Her assistant knocked, holding a tablet. "Ms. Bennett, the Wall Street Journal wants a follow-up on your reforms. And Sarah Kim, our new VP of Diversity and Inclusion, is here with the latest audit." Sarah, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s, stepped in, holding a report. "0 viral discrimination incidents since we launched Dignity in Flight," she said, her voice brimming with pride. "Customer feedback shows a 40% increase in trust among minority passengers. Our stock's up 12% this quarter, despite the DA backlash in some states." She referenced the 2025 political climate, where several states had attempted to ban corporate DEI programs, only to face pushback from companies like Atlantic, which proved diversity was good for business. Olivia nodded, flipping through the audit. "What about industry impact?" she asked. "4 airlines are now using our app framework," Sarah replied. "And the Olivia Bennett method is being adapted by tech and hospitality sectors. Your test flights are setting a new standard." She smiled. "You've made Atlantic the gold standard for inclusion." Olivia stood, walking to her office window. The tarmac below was a symphony of motion planes taking off, ground crews coordinating, passengers moving with purpose. Her phone buzzed with another news alert. Transatlantic Airlines reforms inspire federal push for Airline Equity Act. The story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every passenger who'd felt unwelcome, every employee who'd learned to question their biases, every activist who'd amplified the cause. She thought of Emily, now a voice for millions; Carter, grappling with his privilege; and Susan, teaching others to do better. The incident on Flight 552 had been a spark, but the fire it ignited was reshaping an industry. Olivia's smile widened slightly. Phase 1 was complete, but the work of change was never done. She opened her calendar, scheduling her next test flight. The system was better, but she'd keep testing it, ensuring no one else had to endure what she did that day in Seat 3A. 2 years after the seismic incident on Atlantic Airways Flight 552, Olivia Bennett's story had become a legend etched into the fabric of corporate America. The video of her calm confrontation with James Carter, captured by Emily Jang's TikTok livestream, had been viewed 50 million times across platforms, shared from X to Instagram to corporate training sessions. It was dissected in Harvard Business School case studies, cited in congressional hearings, and credited with inspiring the Airline Equity Act of 2025, which mandated public reporting of discrimination complaints by U.S. airlines. Olivia stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., delivering a TED Talk to a packed auditorium, her tailored blazer as impeccable as ever, her diamond ring catching the stage lights. "Sometimes," she said, her voice steady, resonant, "the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Let others reveal themselves. Document everything. Then use your voice strategically." The audience erupted in applause, but Olivia's greatest pride wasn't the accolades. It was the letters piling up in her Miami office handwritten notes. From passengers of color who no longer felt scrutinized on flights, emails from young black executives who drew courage from her refusal to move from Seat 3A, and messages from white allies learning to wield their privilege responsibly. One letter from a teenage girl in Atlanta read, "I saw your video and decided to speak up when my teacher ignored me. You showed me my voice matters." Olivia kept that letter on her desk, a reminder of why she'd turned a moment of humiliation into a movement for transformation. Atlantic Airways had become the gold standard for inclusive corporate culture. The dignity in flight policy, now a model for the industry, had reduced discrimination complaints by 92% and boosted customer satisfaction to record highs. The passenger reporting app, downloaded 500,000 times, empowered customers to hold the airline accountable. Monthly diversity audits and mandatory unconscious bias training were non-negotiable, with Atlantic's stock price climbing to $150 per share despite a 2025 political backlash against DEA initiatives in states like Florida and Texas. Olivia's monthly test flights continued, unannounced, but the results were different now. On a recent flight to Seattle, a gate agent greeted her with a smile. No questions asked about her business class seat. The system wasn't perfect, but it was working. The ripple effects extended far beyond Atlantic. The Olivia Bennett method, systematic. Testing of discrimination policies by executives had been adopted by tech giants, hotel chains, and even retail corporations. United, Delta, and American Airlines had implemented similar apps and training programs. citing Atlantic's success in their 2025 annual reports. The Airline Equity Act, passed in late 2025, was a direct result of Olivia's coordination with the Department of Transportation's Office of Civil Rights, which had investigated 400 discrimination complaints in the industry that year. Her story was no longer just about one flight. It was a blueprint for systemic change. Emily Jiang, whose live stream sparked the movement, had become a leading voice in social justice journalism. Her documentary, Seat 3, A Story of Justice, won an Emmy in 2025, and her TikTok following had grown to 3 million. Now a consultant for Fortune 500 companies, Emily used her platform to amplify marginalized voices, often citing Olivia as her inspiration. "One moment of courage can change everything," she told a CNN interviewer, her phone buzzing with notifications from followers using #TravelWhileBlack to share their own stories. James Carter's journey was more complex. The viral video had shattered his career, but it also forced him to confront his privilege. After losing his job, he spent months in diversity training, eventually becoming a speaker for the NAACP. His book, Facing the Mirror, A Journey Beyond Privilege, became a bestseller, detailing his mistakes on Flight 552 and his efforts to make amends. Testifying before Congress in 2025, Carter spoke candidly. "I assumed I was right because of how I saw the world. Ms. Bennett showed me how wrong I was." His $50,000 donation to Atlantic's Diversity Scholarship Fund was a step, but his ongoing work with civil rights groups was his true redemption. Susan Miller, once a gate agent who deferred to Carter's authority, had transformed into a Day A trainer. Her sessions, now mandatory for all Atlantic employees, used her own failures as a teaching tool. "I didn't see my bias until it was too late," she told trainees, her voice steady with hard-earned wisdom. But we can all learn to do better. Her work had helped Atlantic become a model for customer service, with passengers of color reporting a 45% increase in positive experiences. Olivia's greatest legacy was the cultural shift she'd ignited. Her story proved that Black stories mattered not just for representation, but for transformation. It showed that one person's refusal to accept injustice could protect thousands. In her TED Talk, she'd said, "Courage comes in many forms. Sometimes it's speaking up. Sometimes it's staying silent. Sometimes it's using your privilege to lift others." The audience had risen to their feet, and the video, posted to Legacy Stories, a YouTube channel dedicated to tales of everyday heroes, had garnered 10 million views. The humanistic lesson of Olivia's story was clear. Power isn't always loud. It's in the quiet resolve to stand firm, the strategic use of evidence, and the commitment to systemic change over personal revenge. A refusal to move from Seat 3 wasn't just about a seat. It was about reclaiming dignity for everyone who'd been made to feel they didn't belong. The story taught that discrimination thrives in unchecked assumptions, but it can be dismantled through courage, documentation, and accountability. It showed that social media, wielded responsibly, can amplify justice, turning a single incident into a movement. As Olivia prepared for her next test flight, she looked out at the Miami tarmac, planes soaring into the sky. Her work was ongoing, but the world was listening. She opened her laptop, drafting a response to Anderson Cooper's request for a follow-up interview. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Legacy Stories invites you to join this movement. Subscribe to our channel for more tales of everyday heroes who refuse to accept the unacceptable. Share your own experiences of standing up to injustice in the comments below. Have you witnessed discrimination in your workplace, community, or travels? Your voice matters. Your story could spark the next wave of change. Because in a world full of James Carters, we need more Olivia Bennetts. What injustice will you help change?